It is. Hello, everyone. Welcome and thank you for taking your coffee break with Sarah and I, the Sarahs. And I'm Sarah Ng, a coach for women in tech. And Hey, How Was Your Day is a coffee break series with a fascinating woman in tech who's living authentically. And we get a glimpse into a day in their past, whether it's their childhood, someday in the past, their present, and the future. And Sarah Merlin is director of UX at Curology. And I looked at your website and there's a hint of, you said also a wizard and something with magic. And I'm so curious about where that came from.
Yeah, so fun fact, literally no one in my life actually calls me Sarah, or very few people do, because as you joked, like I've always been there's always been more than one Sarah everywhere. So my last name Merlin, everyone has like taken a piece of that depending on like where in life my friends are. So I've been called Magic, I've been called Wizard, I've been called Merlin, but Merlin is typically what I go by these days, but I honestly respond to anything.
Have you met another Merles?
I have not. I mean, outside of family, no, I've never met another Merle or like anyone else that uses like wizard derivatives of Wizard and Merlin as their nickname.
Yeah. Yeah, I feel like what you said, always like going to school, it was me and three other Sarahs, different variations of some kind. And the difference would be like an H or not an H. That would be like the extent of the exoticism.
Yeah, and at least you spell your name correctly.
Shots fired for any of the other Sarahs listening. And I'm so excited to have you here because you have no idea how many people are interested in UX, and you've been in user experience for quite a while. You're a director now, so it would be so interesting to hear a bit about that, what your day is like.
Yeah.
But to go even before that, why don't you take us to like a day in your past of where you are and what you're doing?
Yeah, so I think about this so often, and part of it is because I have two young kids, and I think about how their lives are just so fundamentally different than mine. So I'll take a day back in my past. I would say a summer in elementary school. I was living in a suburb outside of Philadelphia, and we lived in not a planned community, but it was like a neighborhood that was all new construction homes and everyone moved in around the same time. And like after camp, the kids would just go meet, and I would often be found playing street hockey with all the boys. Or my best friend from growing up, she and I would go play behind her house. There was a creek. And if you went to the other side of the creek, you could eventually walk to Wawa. And we'd eventually come home when it was time for dinner, or we got hungry or needed snacks. But in the days before you were tethered to social media or a phone and no one knew what to do, we got into a lot of trouble, but like good trouble. And it was just so fun. And I really am lucky I had such a sense of freedom at such a young age. I mean, freedom, relatively speaking, that wasn't like we're going very far. But I think about in contrast to like what my kids are growing up today, it's like almost polar opposite. And anecdotally, maybe it's the reason that like sociologist part of my UX skill set that's just like wondering what this is going to be like, and if it's there's good and bad differences to it, but freedom is definitely something I think about often.
Yeah, the freedom, the untethered part of it to the screen. We didn't have screens. Well, okay, there was a TV, but that was kind of it.
Yeah, but it was whenever it was on, you had to watch.
Yeah, right.
No fast forward, no just pick what you want.
Yeah. Yeah, when I was growing up, my dad was like, you could read during the commercials. And so that would be like my little productivity time. But it was beholden to whatever the programming was exactly.
Yes, exactly.
And what was the good trouble that you got into?
So I would say I got into technology. My family was always very technology forward. So
Mm.
I got into technology at a really young age. I never did anything bad per se, but like on AOL with a dial-up and like chat room,
Yeah.
definitely did way more things than I probably should have at like an elementary school age kid, or mostly like we would, like assume I just generally trust people and always have. So I'm weary of situations, but like
Mm.
definitely we like hitchhiked home from Wawa because we didn't want to walk.
You did?
Yeah, like
In
there was like
elementary
lots of
school?
like crazy stuff. Like
Oh.
I did, and like it was like fine. It was not a big deal. It was going like 2 feet. But yeah, like just running off. I wasn't like a rebel. I was far from a rebellious kid. I'm a firstborn, so I'm definitely a rule follower.
Mhm.
But certainly would like go prank people and do things and all the kinds of like funny things kids do these days. But yeah, it was those summers were so fun.
Ugh. Yeah, I can picture you playing street hockey with your friends and then going to Wawa, which is like this. It's like, is it the gas station that people rave about?
Yeah,
Okay.
I didn't realize it was such a thing until I moved around a bit as a child, until
Mm.
I was actually an adult, and it like blew up more to what it was. But yeah, it's a gas station. It's like a chain gas
People
station.
love it.
People go nuts for it. They do have really good sandwiches, or they did. It's been a long time since
Mm.
I got a Wawa sandwich, but or
Yeah.
Slurpee, yeah.
Oh, Slurpees. Okay. Well, that brings me to 7-Eleven of like the free Slurpee day and then going after school and you like combine them all up. Do you have that at Wawa?
Yes, I think they did. Or I remember getting them, but it honestly could just be 7-Eleven and Wawa are merged in my like childhood mind.
Yeah, fair enough. Okay. And then let's go to what your day is like now as director of UX. And then also like let's go outside of that too.
Yeah, so I am remote, which is a beautiful option, and I'm probably in the minority these days of I
Mm,
can't see myself ever going into to an office full time again
yeah,
because of
same.
the flexibility it allows. So I don't have a typical day. My days are really fluid. So I have two little kids. I typically wake up and I like to catch up. We're a huge Slack organization. So
Mm,
I typically like to catch up on my Slacks because Curology is fully remote and we're relatively distributed across the country. So I'll do that. I'll get my kids. We'll have breakfast going. They're in summer camp, so we're on a very
oh,
more relaxed schedule. But I'm typically playing with them until I walk with them to camp and come back and start my day. So I would say like this morning we have coffee. I often in my mornings will do a lot of like my own networking, what I call
mm,
mental health checks of when you're remote, it can be very lonely. So I do like to do at least once a week, go meet up with coffee for someone in real life.
mm,
So I get like outside of Zoom human interaction that is not my family. But then typically I'm in meetings most of the day, most days.
mm,
That's just part of my role. I lead product design, content design, user research, so all of UX, and I also manage our websites,
mhm.
the marketing side of them. So it's a lot.
No shortage of things.
Is I enter a couple different agencies. I have my team, so my day can vary from like one-on-one meetings to a lot
Mm,
of cross-functional meetings of how do we get something launched or a project done, check-in and outs. But I'm really good at building relationships and also like finding problems, whether that be in design or elsewhere, and like fixing them.
mm,
So that's mostly my day today. It varies, and I the beautiful thing about having kids is I have a very hard stop at my end of day because of childcare. But I
yeah.
typically, after the kids go to bed, I'll usually check Slack again, and like some readers might be listening to this being like, wow, she works a lot.
Mm,
I don't necessarily put in like I don't watch my hours. I would say some days are more than others, but it's more for my own mental health because I can catch up with
Mm,
people that in a 5-minute conversation when you're 3 hours apart, instead of waiting my entire morning, my lunch to then get an answer to something. So
yeah.
it was a huge adjustment being remote that I don't have like 9 to 5 hard stops. My days are really fluid, but that means like when I go for coffee one morning a week, like,
Mm,
I give and take some of my like what I would consider like core hours for different things. And I've been at Curology, it'll be 3 years in September. So
yeah.
I've got like a pretty good groove with it. But yeah, most of my day is filled with meetings, critiques, team meetings, one-on-ones, cross-functionals, you name it. My calendar is usually pretty jammed. And then I use my mornings for focus time.
Mm. Okay. Great overview. And there's so many things to dive into. First, what do you do? How old are your children and what kind of games do you play in the morning?
So they are 5 and 3/4, and God forbid I say anything else in 3. Um, this morning we did Play-Doh and slime. Those like
Oh,
sensory things are really big in our house, and I love art, like a big part of what I do.
you can
So
see
we
the artwork in the back too.
they've got some pretty good stuff. They like to dive like every day. There's something new in the background, which is fun.
Cool.
But yeah, they are fun. We also are really into this like tea party game. I don't know. It's
Mm.
literally you collect all the different pieces you need for a tea party, and when you get them all, you win. So that's been been fun, and actually, it teaches the kids about etiquette because like this is where your napkin goes, and this is where your like
Hmm.
cup goes. And so that one's been fun. Or honestly, depending on the day, it could just be running laps around the house.
Yeah. 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 It's a grab bag of wherever the energy is at.
Yes.
The tea party game. That's like the Monopoly equivalent, the etiquette equivalent of Monopoly or something.
It is so cute. And it's like, I mean, like a 2-year-old can do it to like it clearly, like even a 7 or 8-year-old could probably still find it entertaining. Like you just
Mm.
spin and pick pieces and you can lose pieces, but it's pretty like mellow and chill.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. As one would expect or one would hope, I think, rather than like high intensity game of tea. And then, oh, I think this is so interesting, like how you set up these coffee chats and it's like it's your morning and like what you want to make of it. Something that I hear a lot is how do I reach out to people or figure out who I want to talk to? So how do you do that?
Oh, that's such a good question. So I am like a type A extrovert by nature. I forget what my personality type is, ENFJ. So for me, like connecting with people is a no-brainer. And it's really easy because it's just core to who I do. I'm a connector. I like to have
Mhm.
different people in my life, and I have different friends from like so many different walks of life at this point. But I will say, like locally, I have a really strong network of friends that either work remote or work for themselves. So they're
Mm,
also looking for belonging and like honestly just
yeah.
someone to talk to. So that I start there and branch out. But I do a lot of remote check-ins too. I'm a part of a lot of different Slack groups.
Mm,
Design
mhm.
leadership Slack group, a tech leadership Slack group, a local Boston design Slack group. And that's also a really good place to start for anyone that might be intimidated by like blind messaging people. I definitely do that too. But another thing that has always like rung true to me, and I just always try to keep it top of mind, is if you think about your network in tiers, you have your first tier, your second tier, and your third
Mhm.
tier. Your third tier connections are typically the ones that open up the most doors for you, whether it's
Mm,
trying to get to that next career rung or making a move or whatever that is. So I try to balance all of those.
mhm.
So I keep in touch. I've moved jobs quite a bit, so I have like a vast network of coworkers. And the beautiful thing about my last 2 jobs is that most of them are all across the country, so you have to Zoom
Mm.
keep
Uh-huh.
up with them. But I've created like a pretty core, awesome network that, some of them are recurring once a month or every couple months. But I've built it up over the years as just part of who I am. But it's also like pretty low key to like get into a Slack group if it's, women in tech, or like find whatever niche, or even quite frankly, things completely outside of work.
Yeah.
I'm also a board member at our temple, and I do a lot of like connection through that.
Mm.
So yeah, find what you're passionate about, find other people that are passionate about that thing, and it's pretty easy to connect.
Yeah, this sounds like your superpower, and one that you think it's easy.
It
And
is.
two, it's so clear, like the foundation that you've built and the different like facets of you and like the parts you care about, and then building around that and having like just when you're like, oh, we have this recurring thing that's monthly, and then I have this little thing, and then I meet in person with these friends. It's really you've created like a richness around you of relationships.
It is. And I will say, like, it's something that's always been a work in progress for me. I used to have a really wide network. And I think as I get older, like, I care
Yeah.
more about the people that are so core to me and giving back to that.
Mm.
So I put the most effort into that inner core, and then the rest, obviously I still do, but it is, yeah, it's a big part of me.
Mm.
But also just it comes naturally, so it's easy for me to do networking versus like someone who that might not be a strength to.
Yeah, I think something that you touched on too, the fact that most of the people that you know locally, I believe, are either remote workers or like entrepreneurs, like doing stuff on their own, and so are also have similar needs or kind of like get what you're going through.
It
It
is.
helps.
It definitely helps because everyone has a joint interest in like meeting up in real life.
Mm, yeah.
But I also, because I've been in Boston for quite some time, I have a pretty strong friend group as well. That some of it's morphed
Mm.
from my career, some of it's morphed from like different parts of my life. I still have friends I played kickball with and met like 10 plus years ago. So it's on like a total whim. But yeah, it's been easy to build community when I've been in one place too. But
Yeah.
it's really nice to have people that inherently get Zoom
Mhm.
burnout and inherently get you just want to talk to someone in real life. So that's been fun.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I had a moment during very much like you being in meetings all the time when I was a manager, and just had this one moment during the pandemic where I was like, I could close this laptop at any time and the pixels could go away. They're not real. And it was empowering, but also a bit sad to be like, oh, I miss the in-person connection.
Yeah, I have two friends from a job 2 jobs ago, 2 jobs ago, 3 jobs ago, where we got so close because we ate lunch together every single day, and we're like going
Oh,
through just
yeah.
massive transformation as a company, and also like for anecdotally for the three of us, it was like massive transformation for all of our careers, and like
Mm,
we are seeing them in a couple of weeks. I'm very close with them to this day. And we've
yeah.
like bonded over that experience that if you are starting remote, you have to be much more
Mm,
intentional about building those relationships, which I am versus not.
mhm.
Like you said, it's
Yeah.
very easy to close a laptop and everyone's like gone. So my calendar is very reflective of how I like to spend my time anyways,
Mm,
but it's
mhm.
also like my superpower in being a remote employee, like
Yeah.
making sure I find time to connect with people because you A, get a full sense of what's going on in the org and see other problems, but B, like even over Zoom, it gets you that like water cooler.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. The intentionality behind that. I feel like there's so much there to delve into. I think another thing that is really, really relevant, like to people listening, is you're in meetings all the time and Zoom fatigue is also a real thing. So how do you manage your energy levels, especially with all the context switching? We're going to one-on-one to like probably thinking about the roadmap for the next 6 months. How do you
I'm
do it?
really, yeah, it's tough.
Mhm.
I try to buffer. So I use a like calendar bot that automatically after a meeting will book in minimal 5 minutes. I would say like
Mm.
90% of the time it doesn't work because I'm just constantly overbooked. But I do try, I really, really try to limit back to back to backs. And it's rare that I have them. Like sometimes I have 2 or 3 hour blocks, but like after a 3 hour block, like my brain just goes to mush. So
Yeah.
that's part of it. So I try as much as possible to give myself a mental break, even if it's just to run upstairs to go to the bathroom or like go for a walk outside. I'm trying to do screen-free meetings as much as I can. It varied on success and what I can get away with.
Yeah.
But any meeting that I'm not talking or listening in, I try to just camera off and go walk when I can. Especially, I live in Boston, so you know there's only so many days of the year it's actually nice enough to go do that.
Yeah.
I try to take advantage of that. But mostly, I would say like there's some days, to be totally honest, I'm so burnt out at the end of the day. I just have to sit
Mm.
there and mindlessly watch crap TV. But
Yeah.
like, I also
Really.
my kids are very good. They keep me real, and oftentimes, like everyone at work knows them. They unless I tell them they're allowed to interrupt meetings. So
Mm.
when they come home or when my daughter goes before her nap, so that also helps a sense of realness because I have other little humans in the house. But
Yeah.
it's tough. I mean, I haven't found the perfect balance, but certainly like I know my Zoom limits and I know what
Mm.
I need to do to like, okay, like let me just walk away. Or like if I
Yeah.
see a day that's 5 hours of back to backs, like I'll cancel and move one thing. So at least I get a 30-minute break.
Yeah.
Try to be really respectful of my own boundaries because if I'm not, like I'm not going to be as successful at my job as it can be.
Yeah. Oh, there's so much great wording there of it sounds like using tools to set those buffers, but also knowing your boundaries is so important. Like for you and for everybody, I mean, 3 hours or three meetings back to back is a ton. For me, my limit is probably two. So knowing that about ourselves and then what can we do to work around those parameters and framing it as it's like going to help me to do my best for the company, but I mean, most importantly, like for you and to spend time with your kids too.
Yeah, and I think now that I'm reflecting on it,
Hmm.
early in my career as a people manager, I did a
Yeah.
lot of leadership training that was centered around self-awareness. And
Mm.
I think, especially as you grow in your career, and you don't have to be a people manager to be a leader, those are very different things.
Yeah.
But as you want to be more of a leader, like the key to being a really good leader is being really self aware. There's a lot of
Mm.
being a good leader, but I think that piece, like I block my calendar when it's like do not book because it's time with my kids because I value that. And I work for an organization that does, which is also very critical. But yeah,
Yeah.
I have very strong, like I know my boundaries and I know when I can push myself and when I can't,
Mm.
and when I need to like give and take depending on the situation.
Yeah, that's self-awareness. And then with that calendar, we're gonna flip through and go a couple years off to actually, you can tell me when to stop flipping in the calendar and talk about a day in the future. What is that like and where are we?
Okay, I'm gonna do a good one because I'm gonna manifest this out into the
Okay.
world. So I do not want to be in corporate life forever, which might shock a lot of people who like really know me. But my goal is at age 50 to be retired and be a board
Mm.
member, not public board, private, or angel investor, depending on how things go.
Mhm.
But a lot of what I think about what I'm doing today, I always think on multiple time horizons, but I want to be 50 years old, retired. I see myself at that point. My parents, God willing, they're still alive, will probably need a lot more of me. My kids will be, older and need me in different ways, but I want to have the financial flexibility to do what I want when I want it, not be
Yeah.
beholden to like corporate America. So
Yeah.
I'm doing a lot of like, I'm on a board already. It's nonprofit, but I've been divulging into that and into that world to see like what I need to do to get my portfolio to a place where I can do that.
Mm.
But that would ultimately be the goal, making smart financial decisions, but also, not doing this until I'm 65 and burnt out, but like doing things as I choose and
Yeah.
really giving back.
Yeah. 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 The flexibility of I get to choose what to do with my time, not beholden to money, is such a common theme that I hear of what people are working towards. And I'm so curious for you, why 50?
It's a random number because because as I'm approaching 40, I'm like 40 feels nice, but like 40 would be fantastic, but that's also unrealistic. And I picked it just honestly from a financial planning perspective. Like everyone retires at 65, although I
Yeah.
might have to work a little bit longer or do something just for
Mhm.
health insurance because that's really messed
Yeah.
up in the US. But yeah, I picked it as like, 15 years early sounds like a very achievable goal when the
I love
average
it.
age of retirement is 65. I'm like, let's see if we can do it. Like the reality is that might be totally unrealistic, but I'm kind of just giving that as like something that's far enough into the future, but not so
Mm.
far that it feels like unreachable.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I love it. You're right, because people's minds can often go towards 65 or we're going to do it tomorrow, uh, without thinking about like the means of how to actually do it. So I like this. It's a target, and who knows, it might even be before 50.
It might. It's nice to think about. Like, I've had bits and pieces of what that world looks like.
Mm,
And the other piece of it too is that there's so much I want to do. Like, I want to travel, I want to go,
yeah,
like do these like ridiculous trips, mostly. But there's so much I want to see, and I don't want to wait until I'm so much later in life where like I may or
yeah.
may not be able to do those things. So that's a big part of it. My mom has also been really critical in our childcare. My parents live
Mm,
around the corner from us, so it's like really
yeah.
lovely, and I want to be in the position to do that. God, if my kids decide to have kids one day and we have grandkids, like that would be, being a big part of their lives would also be, and the freedom to do that would be ideal.
Yeah. The second generation of like tea party etiquette games.
God only knows.
I'm so
Like,
hung up on this. I'm like, it's so cool.
and- exactly.
And let's end on these trips, because you kind of hinted at, oh, I'd love to do this in the future, and it sounds like there's something interesting there. I'd love to know, like, what do you have in mind of what you'd like to do?
Oh my God, I want to see everything. The pyramids in Egypt are really high on my list, although
Mm,
I've heard very mixed things about them since the pandemic.
mm,
I really want to see, I've been lucky that I've traveled a lot. So my husband's been to Australia and New Zealand. I've not. That's really high on my list, but like we realistically need like, a huge chunk of time to do a trip
mhm.
that we would
So
want to do
far.
like that. It's so
Yeah.
hard. I want to go all throughout Southeast Asia. Back. I want to do the Northern Lights somewhere
Mm,
in Scandinavia. We did Iceland, but I stupidly thought I could find the Northern Lights just looking out in the sky. No, that is actually like very much not the case.
oh, that's what I thought too. That's what I still think.
You
Okay.
should have
Not
done
that
a
easy.
book a tour if you because that will guarantee you see
Mm,
them. So if you go for that season, Copenhagen is high on my list. Mexico City is high on my list. Patagonia and Chile and Argentina, Mendoza region is really high. It's probably one
mhm,
of the last wine regions in the world I haven't
mm.
been to. I like to travel for food and
Yeah,
eat my way through
of
countries.
course.
So generally, that's like my. I mean, there's pretty much nowhere I don't want to go to, just what's safe. But yeah, everything.
Yeah, you just rattled off about 10. I
Yeah.
love it. Yeah, it's so clear to everyone else as well, is that you have a zest for life. Whether it's there's so many things I want to go explore or people that I want to connect with. And I just feel that like energy and curiosity about things.
Oh, thanks. I mean, that's kind of just core to who I am and my energy, anyways. But I feel like there's just so many cool things in this world, and once you see and are open to another culture or experience something differently, it just
Yeah.
I take it back with me in my work. So that's a big one for me, is like traveling is my zen, but it's also like, as a creative person, it's what fuels my creativity and my drive. So like everything
Mhm.
is kind of uniquely connected. Yes, I love to eat. I love food. I'm a huge foodie. But that piece, like, connecting through meals and through experiences, and putting you way outside your comfort zone, like that's how you really grow too.
Yeah. Yeah. I think there's definitely a component as someone who I did like a bunch of solo traveling. And it's like, this is the way to go. You're independent and you get to explore and meet all these people. And definitely food was such a big component and really pushed me out of my comfort zone, I think, which lended to exploring different careers, starting my own business. It helps tremendously.
It does. And like everyone, like the funny thing to me is, like in a world where we're, at least in the US, it's very like polarizing right now. And like the
Mhm.
more you get out, the more you realize everyone's really the same. And like it's just
Mm,
a perception to some degree of
yeah.
that. And like, whether it's in Africa, Morocco is also really high on my list. I've been through some of Africa. I want to, safari is like one of my number one
Yeah.
things I've done. But that, and like the more you just connect with people, you realize that like everyone really wants the same things. And like I'm just a hippie at heart. I'm like, can't we just leave our world a better place, so that like, we don't blow up our planet in, in the next
Yeah.
30 years. But also, it's just it gets you, it's very easy to get into your algorithm and like get on your,
Mhm.
shown what you want. And in this world today where that's your reality, to like get out in actual reality is really meaningful. So to take it full circle, like whether that's networking or traveling or whatever, like that is something that's really core to who I am, making sure I'm grounded and have perspective in
Mm.
the world and reality.
Yeah. It's a nice callback. Well, well done. That is so good. A
But
host
just
great.
that came to me.
You weren't lying when you're like, I'm really good at winging it. It was great.
Some things are very like normal conversations like this. I'm great. Presentations to executives, I do practice.
Yeah, fair enough. Yeah, given the context. I got it. I get it. All right. Well, thank you so much, Sarah, and for everyone else for taking a coffee break with us. Hopefully, there's so much to learn from you, Sarah, about like your approach to life, like your networking, the callbacks, the way you speak about your work, but also just how you approach life and like wanting time with loved ones and the flexibility and setting yourself up for that by 50. We're all rooting for you to do that. I mean, I'm sure you will.
Well, fingers crossed. I'll make my own luck.
Yes. You create your own luck,
Yes,
I
exactly.
believe. And I will actually, if you could leave a comment later on for people to follow up and like have coffee chats with you, that would be great if you're open to it.
Yes, I was actually going to say, like, is that okay to say? Because I didn't.
Please. Oh my God. Yeah.
So do you want me to say it now and you'll edit it?
Yeah.
Cool. And for anyone who is unsure about reaching out or making a connection, like hit me up. The best way to get a hold of me is my LinkedIn, like / Sarah Merlin. Always happy to have a conversation.
Sarah, you say that now. Like I'm gonna recommend you to at least 20 people. You're gonna be so busy. But
No,
you'll
I love it.
spread them out.
That's my
Okay.
cup.
Okay. Well, everyone have a good day and it was good to see you.
Likewise, Sarah. Cheers.
Bye.